and welcome back to The Give and Go. I am your co-host Reynoso with my boy
Soltero. What's up, guys?
Saudi Arabia is what's up, man. We're going to be reviewing Saudi Arabia today. They are making their 6th appearance in the World Cup. Six, bro.
God
Six.
damn.
6. Their first appearance was in 1994, round of 16 exit, and that was their best performance in World Cup history. Following that, they qualified in 98, 2002, 2006, and finally 2018, where they were in that group with Uruguay, Russia, and Egypt. Yeah. They got annihilated by the host. It was like, what, 5-0, I think?
Yeah, 4 or 5-0.
4 or 5-0. They recuperated from that loss.
They really did.
And they found it within themselves to fight, to come back to a World Cup. And they did it, man. And not just that, they did it in style, bro. Winning first in Group D of the second round in qualification, I believe, with a 6-win, 2-draw, 0-loss record, resulting in 20 points that then qualified them and then to the third round of Asian qualification. And they got first there as well. In Group B, a group that had Japan in it. Yeah. And they ended up getting 7 victories, 2 draws, and only 1 loss. 23 points accumulated in that session. And they find themselves back at the tournament with that performance, man. Incredible, bro. Only 1 true loss in qualification. They've been dazzling, bro, scoring amazing goals, playing well as a team, and getting drawn into Group C with the mighty Argentina, the Robert Lewandowski-led Polish side, and my beautiful, beautiful nation, Mexico. This Saudi Arabia team is interesting, man. They are interesting. I believe when I looked at their squad list, I think they're the only team at this World Cup that's going purely domestic, bro.
Dude, I absolutely love a domestic squad. I really do, though.
That's what the Give and Go's about, man.
Yeah. Because back when I first started watching soccer, what really compelled me to the sport was the idea that you had professionals playing against other professionals from literally all around the world. Yes, obviously a big conglomerate of players do play in Europe, and that's the one where most people want to see. But man, when I remember when I first saw that Chilean squad, and I saw a couple, and I looked on Wikipedia and I was like, you're telling me that there's 2 guys who play in the Chilean league playing right alongside players who play in Spain? That's insane to me.
That is crazy, man.
It's crazy. And so anytime I get a domestic representation within a squad, I absolutely love it. And then I go over the moon when a squad only picks domestic players.
Well, this Saudi Arabia team must have you excited in that case.
Super excited.
And more excited because your boy, Hervé Renard, man, he is a specialist when it comes to guiding a team through World Cup qualification and securing their spot in this prestigious tournament. He did it 4 years ago with that Moroccan side that we were excited about, and he's done it again, man. He has done it again. So that's exciting, man, to have a pretty notable name up front, man.
Saudi Arabia's World Cup qualification starts with Hervé Renard for me, man. It's the perfect appointment in my eyes. Hervé Renard obviously making his name with that Zambian squad, taking them to AFCON glory, which is an insane statement to make in and of itself. Then he got that job at Ivory Coast, kind of worked out, but not really. And then he saw that posting that Morocco wanted to get to the World Cup. He took that immediately, and he did get them there ultimately. Yeah. We saw what happened in 2018. He brought together a really interesting squad, a squad that kind of underwhelmed, but still played good football. And honestly, that took Spain and Portugal to the death, at least as far as they could within a 90-minute game in the group stages. But for me, what I really like about Hervé Renard in the Saudi Arabian squad, man, is that Renard specializes with smaller teams.
Yes.
He specializes with teams that really aren't known, at least to the major public eye. He did it with Zambia, and that is the perfect representation of it. But the fact that he's been with Saudi Arabia for, almost 4 years now is actually really telling, because prior to Renard with Saudi Arabia, no other coach had been at the helm for longer than 2 years.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
And the thing is, when you compare Saudi Arabia's 2018 buildup to this buildup, it's so different. And you can just look at that coaching position, man. They had a really good 2018 campaign, low key. I mean, they did the same thing. They dominated in qualification and played really good football. But at the time, they had Bert van Marwijk, the old Netherlands coach that took Netherlands to the 2010 World Cup final. They had him leading them in qualification. But the thing is, there was a little bit of beef between Van Marwijk and the Federation. Something to do with Van Marwijk not wanting to live in Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis did not like that.
Shit, man. Yeah, come on.
And I get it.
Embrace the culture.
Embrace the culture. Go to a game. Like, see what you got, right?
Man.
And they didn't like that. So I actually completely respected that. But the thing is, it hurt them in the end because they fired him right before the World Cup.
Jesus.
Yeah. So going into a World Cup, they were looking for a manager. And that is the worst way to go into a major tournament, man. It just sucks because everything changes. Squad selection might change. Tactics absolutely change, and just the overall mentality and feel of going into a camp is completely different because literally the entire coaching staff that you were working with in the World Cup qualification is no longer there. You go from having a Dutch contingency to what ultimately ended up being a Chilean coaching staff with Juan Antonio Pizzi. So it's just completely different. The worst way to go into a tournament. But now you have Irv Renard, who has been here since the start after 2018, after letting Pizzi go, and he's just stayed. Completely embracing into the culture, just like he did with Zambia in 2013.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 2015. I don't fully remember.
Like a reliable stepfather, man.
Yeah, he comes in. He's like, "Look, I'm going to take care of you guys. I've done this before, and we can do it together. But we can extend this idea." Back in 2018, the buildup for Saudi Arabia, what they did was to kind of make up for maybe the lack of confidence in a coaching staff, or maybe the lack of play in the Saudi Arabian League. They actually sent, like, I think it was 15, 18 players to Spain for a loan for 6 months right before the World Cup. From January to May, they sent a handful of players over to La Liga on loan just so they could play in a more higher competitive environment.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really interesting idea.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what I didn't like about that is that it shows you that they just don't believe in themselves.
Yeah.
It really does, though.
Yeah.
They're like, shit. We have a tournament in 6 months. We have no coach. We need our players to be playing at the best level that they can. What can we do? Let's just send them to Spain.
Okay.
A really cool idea, but for 6 months, it doesn't work. Like if they if they had did this like 2 years ago and they started talking to Spanish teams and they sent out their players and like, look, we'll pay for your salaries, but stay there for at least a year. Maybe they can sign you on for an extra if you do well. That would have been a really cool idea because at that point, it's not like a quick 6 months decision. It's about development. That would make a lot more sense. But going into 2018, they were just like, shit, we need these guys playing at the best level that they can. Send them to Spain for 6 months. But that's so tough because you play with the team your entire career in Saudi Arabia because at that time, it was also an only domestic squad. And then you send them to Spain. It's tough, not only for the players, but for the coaching staff too, because they didn't even know they were getting a player. They didn't pick the Saudi player. The team made a deal with the Saudi Arabian league. So it's just weird for the coaching staff, for the Spanish teams, and for the Saudi players themselves. What I like about the build-up to here is, first off, again, the solidity and the reliability of Irv Renard staying and fully believing in these Saudi players, and the idea of we don't need to send our players off. We're going to completely rely on our league. We're going to completely rely on our coaching staff, something that they haven't been able to do for 20 years. That's how they're going into this tournament. And I absolutely love it, man, because you just bring together these players who've been playing with each other for these last 4 years under Renard. There's a definitive tactic. There's a definitive mindset when you go into these Saudi camps. And bro, they have six friendlies to play right before the World Cup.
God,
so they're basically going to put their league on hold, get every player that's going to play in the World Cup, and they're going to just have an insane camp. And then they're going to play their first World Cup game. A luxury that most other countries do not have.
Fuck, Mexico's fucked, bro.
Oh yeah, bro. Dude, Saudi Arabia is going to be they're going to be in sync, bro.
Oh god.
They're going to be in sync.
That's not what I wanted to hear, man. This was supposed to be the easy game, bro. There's a lot of merit, man, in having a coach be at the helm for 3+ years, but also have that be a positive relationship, man.
Dude.
I'll bring up my own example. Tata Martino has been with Mexico for 4 years now. toxic, bro.
Yeah.
Toxic. You can even look across the pond. USA, not everyone's on board with Greg Berhalter either.
Oh, yeah.
It hasn't ended in the most satisfying way. And that kind of goes for a lot of these nations. Yes, they have the same coach that they start off with, but it's not fruitful, man. It's not a good relationship.
Yeah.
But it sounds like with Saudi Arabia, bro, it's actually really positive.
Yeah.
It's actually something that's going to end up benefiting them in the long term. And so they're setting the foundation for a really successful, hopefully, World Cup. And if not, then they'll at the very least have something to work off of going into 2026. So, man, props to Saudi Arabia and how they've managed to restructure themselves. And I think we saw that with their qualifying cycle, man. They were incredible, bro. Incredible.
The way that I see the Saudi Arabian team in 2022 is I see this as FIFA World Cup Saudi Arabia round 2. Where round 1 was 2018, it had been a 16-year absence of Saudi Arabia in making World Cup appearance. And they go in 2018 in honestly flying form. They again had a dazzling World Cup qualification. And I was actually excited to see what they could do in that Group A because it was kind of up for grabs. I mean, you had Uruguay, Egypt, and Russia. So no one really knew who was the better team other than maybe Uruguay. So I thought that Saudi Arabia could actually kind of surprise in that group. But what ultimately happened was they had no experience. And we've talked about that before.
Zero, bro.
Yeah, zero. We've talked about it before with other squads. Experience, especially on the biggest stage, means so much more than it usually does at club level. And that was on full display for Saudi Arabia in 2018, man. None of their players had ever played in a World Cup. And it really did show, especially in that first game, because
Can you imagine, man?
Oh, I know,
Can you
dude.
imagine?
You're the opener, and this is your first World Cup.
Like the whole crowd's rooting for you to fucking get blown out, bro.
Yeah, bro. And you can't look to anybody on the field to help you because everyone else is in that same position. For me, it was just simply the fact that Saudi Arabia were not ready for that game against Russia. They just weren't ready. But the thing is, you already kind of prefaced it. They built off of that loss. They said, like, all right, guys, we got fucked in that first game. We just weren't ready. But they had a better game against Uruguay, and then they ultimately got a nice win against Egypt on the last match day. A little bit more respectful and I think deserving because when you really look at it, man, this Saudi Arabian team is really talented. Not just in the results, but also in the players that they have. They have good ball handlers. They play a really possessive style of football. Honestly, a kind of akin to Spanish football in the sense that you just hold the ball, you kind of knock it around, and then you find your opportunities. It's really respectful, though, the way that they play, especially considering that every single one of their players plays in Saudi Arabia, a league that virtually gets no global exposure. So it's a really interesting team to see and a team that I'm excited to see again here in 2022 because now they have that experience. Now they know what it means to be in a World Cup. And you add in the fact that the World Cup is in the Middle East. I think they're going to have a bigger factor.
That's an underrated point, bro.
Exactly. I think they're going to have a bigger factor here that's going to actually help them perform better than I think a lot of people have them performing, bro.
Dude, I completely agree in that. The way that they play, bro, it's possession-based. But I looked at a highlight reel just recently of all the goals they scored in the qualification cycle. And one thing that stood out to me a lot was their decision-making in front of goal, man. They just do what needs to be done to get a goal.
Yeah.
And that itself is a thing that has plagued so many teams, man.
Yes.
Final third decision making.
Yep.
Saudi Arabia seems to be a team that plays for each other and they don't care about stats. They don't care about numbers. Whoever's up front, whoever has that opportunity, whether it's a fullback or midfielder or one of the forwards, if you have the opportunity to score the damn goal. And they do it, man. They do it so well. Also, to go in line with just what you're building up, bro, it's funny just watching how this team plays and how they're kind of getting maximized. I'm thinking, bro, right now it's Hervé Renard, but if they can get Graham Potter to coach them in 2026, man,
bro.
This team could be a giant, bro.
A giant. But that's what's crazy, man, is that Saudi Arabia, if you look at the results over these last 4 years, hell, even include the 2018 qualification, there's an argument to be had that Saudi Arabia is actually the best Asian team. Mm-hmm. An absolute argument that you could fairly have because, dude, they were in the toughest group in the Asian World Cup qualification. They had Japan, Australia, and a really feisty Oman and Vietnam side, bro. That's when you compare to what Iran had to face with a really weak Syria and Lebanon side, a UAE team that literally could not score. Saudi Arabia were in a really tough group, and they topped it.
Topped it, bro.
They topped it, bro. And that for me, that goes a long way as far as just team mentality, team performance, and team chemistry.
I want to talk about their squad a little bit. Just some names that stand out to me, man. Because I think to me, one of the most notable players on this Saudi Arabian squad has to be the ball playing ability of Sharani, man. This guy is the most recognizable Saudi Arabian player on the squad. Bro, he looks like fucking Marcelo.
He does. The fullback, yeah.
And he plays like him too. Because, bro, while watching that highlight reel, I was like, holy shit, this guy's heavily involved in the creation of their final third, man. Yeah. An incredible player. And I think he's actually one of the better players for this team.
Oh, no, yeah.
Alongside him, you also have Amri, the center back, who I think is going to be starting at this World Cup. Yeah. He seems to be the surefire option there. Very solid, very consistent. And also in the midfield, a player that stood out to me was Kano, man. He's basically starting every single match for Herb Renard. He seems to be one of Renard's favorite players to go with. And I think he's going to be solidifying his spot in the World Cup because his ability to be a consistent player in this system, be a player that can get involved in Saudi Arabia's attack, I think it's going to be a clinical role that he's going to be playing at the World Cup. And I'm excited to see him. I think he'll be a standout for a lot of people that watch the Saudi Arabian team for the first time.
Oh, yeah. For me, I have 3 players that really stand out for the Saudi side. And that's not to disrespect any of the players because as a unit, this team is really, really talented. For me, the 3 players that really do shine, Al-Sharani, the fullback, as you just perfectly said, he really gets forward, gets so involved offensively. But he's pretty good, too. You look at his ball handling. He's very talented fullback, man. And then, yes, Mohamed Kano, man. When I remember when this guy first hit the scene, I saw him with Al Hilal. Playing against, I think it was Liverpool. It was in a FIFA Club World Cup. Mohamed Kano is really, really good, bro. But he's an all-action midfielder. Gets the ball, but his decision-making is really good. Even if it's just like doing a 2-foot pass or, maybe like a 50-foot pass, he makes the right decisions. But he also pushes Saudi Arabia's offense, man. So little by little, he's just that type of midfielder that just gets involved on both ends. And that's the perfect type of midfielder you want to have. And he couples it with pretty good technique. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I look at Kano play, bro, you could probably have a career in Europe if you wanted to.
Damn.
He probably could. But he probably makes good money in Saudi Arabia. He's just comfy, so I'm not gonna blame him. He absolutely could have a career in Europe. The only thing that sucks about Kano's situation, man, is that he has been suspended from club level due to contract issues. So he hasn't played this calendar year. Thing is,
he's okay. He's okay.
It's
bro.
okay.
He's okay.
It's okay. But it kind of sucks because he could be in slightly better form, at least game-wise.
So we have 6 friendlies to play, man.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And the thing is, in this last international window, he still got called up by Renard and still played. So it really does show you the value that Kano brings to the Saudi Arabian squad. And for me, the third player that really does stand out is also another Al Hilal player, Al Dosari. Plays out on the left wing, and this guy's just a baller, dude. He's a dribbler at his finest for Saudi Arabia. So penetrative, but pretty creative too. He's got a lot of flair to his play just naturally. Not saying it works all the time, but he's just a fun player to watch in general.
Yeah, I think honestly a running theme for this Saudi Arabia team is how interchangeable a lot of these players are. Like you take one player out, the next player up kind of does the same thing, man. Yeah. You look at the strikers, Al Beraiken and then Al Shari. When I looked at their numbers, they were nearly identical. Bro.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, at the end of the day, just go with whoever you feel is just feeling better on that day, honestly. Whoever had a better breakfast gets the start, man. Because it's like that there on the wing as well with Al-Naji, I think is how you say it, or Al-Muwalad. Those two also seem like really good options up front as well. And that just continues alongside the whole lineup, dude. So I think that's a credit to Saudi Arabia's system that they've implemented, the coaching of Herb Renard, and also the talent of these players that they know their role and they know that when they do get the chance to get called up, they'll put in a good shift, bro.
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually a really good point, man, because the very last game that Saudi Arabia played was against the United States. Obviously on European soil, so it was neutral grounds. So there wasn't really much of an atmosphere, but Renard chose to go with a B team because he wanted to see the second string perform as in the starting positions to see just how they would do, right? And the U.S. kind of fielded an A- team themselves, but for Saudi Arabia, for me, it was clearly a B team. And the game ended 0-0 with Saudi Arabia having a large portion of possession. Exactly what you said in the sense that even if you don't play your best player, you put in a guy who does the exact same thing. Renard picks these guys purposefully, and he has a very specific tactic that he likes to set out. And for me, it really works for the Saudi team because you know what you're going to get, especially if you're a player. You know what you're going to do. You know what has to be done. And for me, that only helps you because when you have a plan and you can perform it and actually execute it, and then you win the game, that's positivity at its finest, especially for an unknown team like Saudi Arabia.
You mentioned the Argentina deep dive. You mentioned that Argentina was drawn into the easiest group at the World Cup. That then makes me think that Poland, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia are considered relatively weaker teams within the scope of other World Cup groups. Yeah. But does that create a landscape or a path for Saudi Arabia to have potentially a Cinderella-like run in this tournament? Is there a chance that Saudi Arabia, despite what people are saying between Mexico and Poland, sneak their way into that second slot and find themselves in the round of 16, bro?
Oh, bro, I dream of that. But what's crazy is that I actually do think it's possible. If you look at the rest of the teams, I don't think Argentina is going to be winnable. I just think that's a really tough thing to ask. Argentina this year is looking absolutely incredible. We've already done that deep dive. Nothing more to be said there. But when you look at the other two teams, and we'll get deeper into them, but just at least on the surface level, Poland are really inconsistent, man. Really, really inconsistent. They have a lot of talent, Zielinski, Lewandowski, just to name a few. But as a unit, they're kind of poor, man. Really, especially when they play against better sides. Poland never win. When they play a better team, Poland cannot figure it out. And when they play a team that plays at their level, it's tight till the very end. And so if Saudi Arabia can just surprise Poland, again, with their possessive-based style of play, I think they'll have a shot at beating them. I think Saudi Arabia will be able to keep it tight. And if they can just maybe nullify Lewandowski, which I think is easier at international stage because the players that
absolutely
because the players that Lewandowski have around him is just not the same that he has
handcuffs at the international stage.
Yeah, bro, that's what I'm saying. It's just not the same that he has at club level, so it's a lot more doable. And knowing a guy like Renard, he's going to have some sort of strategy to try to make that happen. And if Saudi Arabia is playing well, man, I think it's possible. And then we get to Mexico.
Careful now.
And a team that just isn't playing well right now.
No,
They're
sir.
just not.
No.
Saudi Arabia can take advantage of that. Absolutely can. And the thing is, I mean, when you look at teams that Mexico have played against, Mexico's losing to kind of every style of play. They lose against like a feisty, youthful U.S. side. They lose against a counterattacking Canadian side. Colombia, right, with that South American flair. They're losing to every style of play. Who's to say that Saudi Arabia can't beat them? I actually see them doing it.
You throw in Mexico's history of always playing up to the level of the opponent. And I could see them playing, quote unquote, down to Saudi Arabia this game. And that's all Saudi Arabia needs, man. That's all they'll need to take advantage.
They'll take over.
There's that potential, man. There's that potential. We could be seeing possibly the best Saudi Arabian team at a World Cup.
Yeah.
So there is that chance for them to honestly find themselves in that second slot. But the unfortunate thing for me, man, or rather a big test for this team is going to be their mentality because the first game, bro, they face off against Argentina.
I know.
And I'm gonna chalk that up as a loss, bro.
You have
no
to.
matter how good Saudi Arabia play,
Yeah.
I think that's a loss, man.
Yeah.
And losing your first game in a World Cup, bro,
The worst.
can be detrimental. I would hate for the Saudi Arabia team to lose that match and then just fall into their old ways of how it's gone for them in the World Cup. Just group stage exit after group stage exit. If they can have the mental fortitude to just bounce back from that and then face off against, I believe, a Mexican team, if not Polish, then there's that opportunity, man. There's that chance that they can find it. It's just a question of their mental state.
I completely agree, but that's also why I get excited about the Saudi team this year specifically, man. And just to repeat my point, in 2018, it was their first time after a 16-year absence. No player had played in a World Cup. Thing is, you can make this exact same comparison to Peru in 2018. For Peru, it had been a long time since they had a World Cup appearance. And what happened? They played a really tough Denmark side in that first game, lost, could not recover. And for me, if Peru had just been more experienced, say they had made that World Cup in 2014 somehow, I think Peru would have done a lot better in that group, man. That Peru team was really, really talented. And I think I can say the same thing about this Saudi Arabian team, man. In 2018, they were put in an interesting group, a group that they could have managed, but they just had no experience. But now they're put in another interesting group, in my opinion. But the difference is that they have that experience now, and they can use that to better their mentality, as you were just saying. I think if they have the right mentality, I agree, they can actually maybe do something in this group, bro. But the thing is, I actually do think they can unlock their mentality in this case because of that experience in 2018, because most of the players that did play in 2018 are now here in 2022. Just a lot of things are different, man. They have so much more solidity in the coaching staff, so much more experience in themselves, and I think just overall a more positive camp. And hopefully, they can think of that first game as just a warm-up, and then the World Cup starts for them, whether it's against Poland or Mexico.
Prediction time then in that case, because the tone you're giving me is really interesting. Really interesting.
Very interesting.
We try to talk positive about every single team.
Absolutely.
We try to focus on their strengths and their weaknesses. It's always going to be like that. But I can sometimes tell when there's a magical touch to your tone. And am I sensing that you think genuinely, realistically, that Saudi Arabia comes out in second in this group?
I really want to believe it. I really do. Not just because of the story, but because of what I actually see out on the pitch. I do think the Saudi Arabia team is very talented, and I do think that they can take advantage of out-of-form teams in Poland and Mexico. That's a perfect recipe for Saudi Arabia to get out of this group. It is just tough to actually predict that, considering that Poland do have a lot of talents. Can they figure it out? I don't know. Does Mexico do what Mexico does and have stellar group stage performance? Mm-hmm. Because in 2010, 2014, 2018, regardless of the build-up that Mexico
pick any year,
had,
bro. Any year you want.
And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Any year you want.
Round of 16, baby.
Yeah, Mexico do really well in the group stage. They might find that magic. They might find that push to just perform the fuck out of themselves in the group stage. And that's just only bad news for Saudi Arabia, because at that point, when you're playing against a really good Mexico side, that's really tough to do, because Mexico have the legacy, they have the experience, they have the name. And I do think that actually does mean something in a World Cup. Saudi Arabia do not have that. But man, if Saudi Arabia just take history out of the equation, if they just take what Mexico and Poland mean and the players that they have, I do think Saudi Arabia can really, really try for a second place spot, man. But do I think they'll do it? God damn, that's a tough decision. That is a really tough decision. Ultimately, I don't think they will. I think they'll get really close. I have them finishing somehow in third place. I don't have them finishing in fourth place, but I do not have them getting out of the group.
Damn, man. I bet Saudi Arabian fans were
tough,
perked
man.
up until that sentence, man. They were hoping. They were feeling it. I think they're getting fourth. When we talk about fourth place potential teams, I think Saudi Arabia has the best chance to land in third place. That's how I see them going into this tournament. I think they're getting fourth. Would not be surprised if they get third, especially if they get a result against Poland or Mexico. But all in all, I don't see them getting out of the group. I think despite their mentality, despite the foundation they've set within their federation, all the right moves they made, it's the quality, man. Yeah. The quality of the players. It's almost a limitation of these guys being solely domestic league players.
Right.
That makes me pick still the talent, the European talents of Poland, the half European, half Liga MX talents of Mexico.
Exactly.
That's what I'm going to end up going with. But I'm going to be watching those Saudi Arabia games hoping, man. Because like you said, I want it to happen.
Yeah.
I do.
I do.
I'm going to be rooting for it. But if I got to submit my prediction, if I got to put it on paper, if I got to put money on it, Saudi Arabia is landing in fourth place.
Yeah, and when you look at it, I say the only true critique I have of them is probably how clinical they truly are. When you look at how many goals they only scored like 12 goals in that final stage. Now, albeit they were in a tougher group, but yeah, they don't create the most chances. They have a lot of possession, they have a lot of penetration, but you know, ultimately a lot of the crosses aren't on target. A lot of their final through balls just aren't accurate, or maybe they have a really good chance or a half chance, usually doesn't go in. For them, they have to try like 10, 15 times against weaker opposition, and then they create these really well-crafted goals. But at the World Cup, when you only have 3 games and you have to be incredibly clinical, That's where it's really going to matter. And I think Saudi Arabia are just going to fall short. Ergo, they won't get out of the group.
Dude, yeah, you look at I think the last 4 friendlies, they haven't scored a goal.
Right.
That's
a little concerning.
That's very concerning. Man.
Yeah.
Very concerning. So all in all, that's what we have for Saudi Arabia. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know. What do you think about this Saudi Arabian team? Are they a 4th place team? Could they get 3rd, or could they get 2nd place? Shit, maybe even 1st place in this group, man. Let us know what you think. Shout out to any Saudi Arabian fans we have. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe to keep up with us as we continue doing these deep dives. And we will see you guys soon. Till next time, guys. Peace.